Hey guys, welcome to Coffee with Connie. I'm Connie Fuksa. Of course, I hit the button a little fast. See, even me, who does this video thing kind of frequently, has trouble as well. So, let's get right to it. How are you today? I'm Connie Fuksa. Welcome to Coffee with Connie. Thank you so much for tuning in. So I want to talk to you guys today. Last week I talked about letting other people's opinions affect how you do things. And so I was listening to a podcast this morning, and I really just wanted to share with you guys some thoughts about things that get in my way, that get in, stumble on. And I wanted to be a lot more transparent with you guys about things that we talk about. You know, as most of you know, I owned a company for more than 30 years and recently sold that company. And so I was a lot of times talking about things with respect to real estate, and I'm happy to talk about those things. But what I really like to share with you guys more often now are some things that I learned through that process or that I'm learning through the next part of this process. And so I really wanted to share with you today something that was really close to my heart that sort of was a little bit on the heels of what I talked about last week. And this is really raw and honest for me as well. When we sit and talk about what are you afraid of? And when I say afraid of, I'm not talking about first of all, let me tell you that I have an absolute terror of snakes. So if you ever want to know what will totally send me off the loop, it's a snake. But I'm not talking about those terrors. I'm not talking about things you're afraid of. I'm talking about things that you're afraid to do that will change your life, that will propel you to the next spot, that'll even, when I say propel, I don't mean send you from here to the next county. I mean that will propel you from here to the very next step you need to make. So I wanted to share with you a couple of things, a little bit about my story, because I feel like that really hits on what we're talking about today. But I also wanted to share with you some things that I'm doing to move that needle a little bit, and some things that I'm afraid of. I was talking to some ladies this weekend, and we were talking about some business processes and things, and I shared some things that I am not good at, that I'm afraid to do, and they were really surprised because they were like, wow, you owned a business for all these years and you sold that business and you're really successful, and we're really shocked that something like that makes you afraid, or that it's a fear that you have, or a hurdle that you need to get over. So I thought, I really wanted to share with you guys some of those things for me, because it's real. It's things that we all struggle with. There are fears that we all have, and we have to figure out what the next step is that we can take to move through that. So I want to share my story for a minute because I feel like it's really relevant in this particular situation. But so as I told you, I owned a business for a long time. When I went into that business, a lot of you, because of social media, may know, it was pretty successful. But there was a time when I first started in that business, my mom owned it, and I worked at nights and weekends and taught myself something that I didn't know anything about. And so, it was really scary learning these new things and being responsible for all this stuff. And then I went to the next level where I actually became management. And holy cow, that was a totally different world. And I was pretty young, and I didn't know how to transition from being an employee to being the manager of those people that I had been working side by side with. And so that was a huge challenge and very scary, because you're just afraid you're going to mess up. You're afraid people aren't going to like you. There's lots of steps to that. And then you get to the point where you are responsible for other people's livelihood. So, when you run or own a business, really it's up to you to make sure that business thrives, not only for yourself and your family, but for all of those families that depend on your business to feed their children, to be able to do the things they want to do, to be able to pay for their house and their cars and those things. And that's a huge responsibility and pretty scary in itself. Those steps I somewhat had to go through on my own, in the respect that it was just the next step and I didn't have a choice. So when you talk about things that you might be afraid of, what I really wanted to share with you today is, in part of this journey in selling the business, that was a progression of things that happened that were going to happen anyway. And so I needed to just figure it out. So it's sort of like you make the decision that you are going to do a jump out of an airplane, do the parachuting thing, which is something I would never do either. But just saying, definitely not going to happen in this girl's life. I am very afraid of heights. So not as much of as I am of snakes, but fearful of heights. I have little heart palpitations there. So I'd never get in that plane. But if you're that person and you get in that plane and you have any height or fear of that free falling thing, you don't have a choice. When it comes time to get out of that plane, you're going to do it, right? You have to do it. So that's somewhat how my business was, in the respect that I was learning as I was going along, and the changes were happening and propelling me to the next level. And so that was really exciting. And I didn't have time to think about, oh gosh, I'm afraid, like, how am I going to pay for this? How am I going to do this? How am I going to make these changes or make sure that all of the security is taken care of? But here's what I wanted to share with you. Next part of my journey, I sell that business. Very exciting. A lot of challenges, and not all good challenges. A lot of it was learning experiences as well. But here's the new change. So I didn't have a new plan. And so I got to talking with a good friend of mine, Kim Williams, who is a Mary Kay sales director. And I've been buying Mary Kay from her for a very long time. And I loved it. It's very good for me in the respect that I have very allergic spots on my face that I can't use most things. I mean, very quickly it comes to light. So I had really good success. And she said to me, well, now that you've sold your business, would you consider becoming just, a consultant for your own use? You don't even have to be a salesperson. And I said, yeah, kind of the dollars and cents make sense, but this isn't really what my plan is. And at the time, I really didn't know what I was going to do next with my life and my career world. How was I going to do that? I really wanted to do some coaching for small businesses, leaders, and teams, and really work on those levels. And I do a lot of that. But the Mary Kay world really was not in my plan, and mainly because I'm not a salesperson. I'm not a person that's going to sit and tell you all of the fabulous things about something and try to give you a close or a sale, because it's just not in my DNA. The whole time that I owned my title business, I was not good at going out and cold calling on people and saying, hey, give me business. It just wasn't my thing. That's a fear of mine. I am not good at doing that sale. Sorry, there's something in my eye, but I'm not good at doing that sale and pushing you to the next level to buy something that I have. It just wasn't my thing. But once I got involved in Mary Kay, what I learned was there's so much support and resources that I was able to take that in that business to the next level. But what I'm going to tell you about fear is this. So I do have a fear. I can't pick up the phone and call you and say, hey, would you let me come over and do a facial? Or, hey, would you be interested in trying our new face cream? Because it's just not, it gives me a lot of anxiety. But here's what I did learn. I did learn that people want to understand what you have to offer. And if you don't share it, they can't possibly know what you have available, number one, and number two, what your passion is about that. So I talk a lot of times about passion and your why and moving it to the next level. And here's what I want to share with you with understanding my story. So I started in March with Mary Kay. I had no idea what I was going to do next. I mean, I really wanted to do coaching, but I didn't have it all spelled out. And the one thing I'll tell you is once I embraced the fact that this is something that I felt really strongly about, and I just wanted to tell other people about it, it has been incredibly successful. But if I stopped thinking about the thing I'm afraid of and just started following what I cared about, it started working. So what I want to share with you today is knowing that story and understanding that piece is there's a lot inside of you that's really, really important, and there's things that are holding you back. So when I was sharing this weekend with some other ladies that are in our unit, and they were asking me, how did you do this? How did you do that? How are you so successful with this and that? I shared, I'm not the person. The problem is I don't like to straight out ask you, will you do this? Because I feel like I'm being kind of pushy. And so what I learned though, if I don't do that, you have no way of understanding or knowing what I care about and why it's so important to me. And if you trust me, more than likely you're going to trust what I'm sharing with you. And I had to get out of my own space to let myself be more successful in doing that. And so what I want to share with you is whatever that fear is, whether it is, in this scenario, these girls were like, I can't believe you're afraid of that. I mean, like, you ran this business for all of this time. And I said, I just didn't want to be that pushy person. I'm not that sales in your face person, right? And so for me, that's a heartache. So what I want to share with you is when I said to these girls, this was a problem I had, I then became somebody they could relate with because I shared that vulnerability. And I want you guys to understand that whatever that fear is, whether it's the snake, whether it's the jumping out of the building, out of the airplane, whether it is when you go to work, maybe you're just not really good at a certain thing and you're afraid to tell your boss that. Or maybe you're having some struggles at home with your mom or your dad or your husband or your wife. You need to share what that fear is, because the person on the other side, what I'm trying to tell you, doesn't understand that that isn't working for you. So instead, if you're battling with something, whether it's with a family member or a spouse, or you're battling with something at work, or you're trying to get yourself to the next level, you have to figure out the route around what that fear is. And I'm not going to tell you to run right through it, because that may not necessarily be the right path. What I am trying to tell you is you have to define what that is and then figure out what that path is to get around it. So you have to understand that that fear has a purpose. It's there for a reason. And whatever that reason is, it may be something that's beneficial to you. And you just have to figure out what the reason it's put in your path for and how you're going to get around it. Because I'm here to tell you that if you don't let yourself get around it, you're never going to move out of the square that you're in. And our life is filled up with a bunch of squares moving different ways, backwards, forwards, side and side. And if you don't figure out where your next square is and how you're going to get around that fear and put it behind you, you're never going to be able to progress. So if it's a problem that you're having financially, or if it's a problem in your family, figure out what that obstacle was put in front of you for, and figure out what's on the other side of that obstacle that you need to do. You know, my fear of snakes, if my dog is out in the yard and that snake is around my dog, all bets are off. My fear is gone. I want to make sure my dog's protected so he's not bit. You have to figure out why that thing was put in your path so you can get around whatever that obstacle is. Get out of your square, take that step, move to the next spot. And I hope you guys have a fantastic day. Thanks so much for tuning in to Coffee with Connie. Reach out and let me know what you think. And I hope you guys really enjoy this fabulous weather we're having. I look forward to talking to you again real soon. I'm Connie Fuksa. I'll talk to you again soon. Bye-bye.